Welcome, everybody. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Right now, we're going to wait a couple more minutes until we are right at the hour to get started. But while we wait, it would be wonderful if you could let us know in the chat box where you signing in from. Ooh, Uzbekistan. Hello. Argentina, Peru, Costa Rica. Oh, it's 5 a.m. in Uzbekistan. Wow. Very early. Japan, Orlando, Chicago, Morocco, Egypt, Peru, Portugal, Vietnam. That's always exciting to see people from all over the world. Mexico, Ecuador, Bangkok. Another one from Mexico. Hello, Pennsylvania, Mexico, Sinaloa. I'm also in Mexico, and I'm in Mexico City right now. Oh, Brazil. And I'm always excited when I see someone from Brazil because that's where I'm originally from. So hello. Toluca, you're close to me. Shanghai. That's wonderful. Well, we have more people coming in. So I'm going to give it just one more minute before we get started. Philippines, Dominican Republic. Always makes me want to travel. Oh, it's 2 a.m. in Egypt. Oh my goodness. Thanks for being here instead of being in bed. That's amazing. Beijing. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and welcome all of you officially to the second session on today's webinar, Breaking Through the Screen, Empowering Students to Soar to New Heights in Online Learning, presented by our dearest authors, Drs. John King-Shin and Jared Borup. So this is this webinar is a second one for the launch of our professional development book, Breaking Through the Screens, Practical Tips for Engaging Learners in the Online and Blended Classroom. So thank you for being here today. My name is Fernanda de Oliveira, and I'm a product marketing manager for the very young learners and teen programs at National Geographic Learning. And I'm excited to be here with you all today, as we will have Drs. Borup and Dr. Shin help us explore useful frameworks and tools for developing assessments and providing feedback using technology in our English classrooms. Before we get started, I'd just like to take a few minutes to go over some of the functionalities of the platform, even though you're very familiar with it by now. So remember, as you're already doing, use the chat box at the left bottom of your screen to send messages to everyone. Be sure to send to all panelists and attendees, or everyone, which is usually the way it's there on your Zoom screen. On the right bottom, you will see a Q&A button. Please use that to ask the presenters questions. We will do our best to save a couple of minutes at the end of the session to go over those questions. And if not, we can always address them in our blog post, in our In Focus blog. So stay tuned to that as well. And finally, within 5 business days of the webinar, you will receive an email with the recording of the session and also a certificate of attendance. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. Dr. John King-Shin Well, we all know her. She's an associate professor of education at George Mason University and the academic program coordinator of the Teaching Culturally and Linguistically Diverse and Exceptional Learners program at the same university. Dr. Shin specializes in teaching ESL, EFL to young learners and teenagers, and has provided professional development programs and workshops to EFL teachers in over 100 countries around the world. She is a series editor of National Geographic Learning's Young Learner programs, Welcome to Our World, and Explore Our World, as well as the teen program Impact, and also an author of the professional development title, Teaching Young Learners English. So welcome, Dr. Shin. Very nice having you here with us today. And Dr. Jared Borup, that we know already, he is an associate professor in the Division of Learning Technologies at George Mason University. In his current position, he is the professor in charge of the blended and online learning in schools, master's and certificate programs that are devoted to improving teacher practices in online and blended learning environments. Previous to earning his PhD, Jared taught history at a junior high school for 6 years. He has also taught online and blended courses since 2008. Jared currently researches student support systems in online and blended environments, and his publications include 35 journal articles, 12 book chapters, and the book K-12 Blended Teaching, a guide to personalized learning and online integration. So I'm handing it over to you, and thank you.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And hello, English language educators around the world. Thank you for joining us for another sneak peek of our new book, Breaking Through the Screen. We will explore a few useful frameworks from our book that will guide your efforts in effective online and blended instruction that engage diverse learners through interactive and creative uses of technology. We will show you some practical activities. Many of them are from English teachers just like you, that you will be able to apply to your classroom, whether you're currently pivoting back to online teaching or applying technology in new ways through blended learning environments. We hope that this book and our webinar will help you transform your use of technology and elevate English language learning in your online and blended classrooms. As the title of this presentation says, we hope this book and our webinar will help you empower students to soar to new heights in online learning. So welcome. To start, I'd like to give you a brief background of our book. The idea was born in March 2020, and that's when the world changed. Dr. Borup and I collaborated with National Geographic Learning to develop a 3-part webinar series to help teachers around the world with a dozen tips for engaging students in online English language learning. And so if you get our book, you will see that there is a lot of overlap with the topics that are here from our webinar series, but the ideas have been further developed. And in addition, we have many activities from teachers around the world that are highlighted in this book. So where did those ideas come from? Well, after a few additional webinars that Dr. Borup and I did in fall of 2020, we were thrilled to be ambassadors for National Geographic Learning's exciting initiative called Learning Moments 2020. So in November 2020, English teaching professionals from around the world submitted their amazing online activities for learners of all ages and from diverse contexts. As part of Learning Moments 2020, we asked teachers to share an online teaching story. something they did in one of their classes that they wanted other teachers to know about. So of the 158 entries received from 50 countries, we have incorporated 26 examples in our book, Breaking Through the Screen. So here you can see the cover of the book and the topics in the table of contents. And so some of the topics will seem very familiar to you because you would have seen them in the webinar topics. But as I said, we've gone deeper and we have even more examples for you. Just to give you an idea of the structure of each chapter, so every chapter, of course, starts with a title, inspirational quote, a photo, but also a before you read activity to help warm up your brains to the topic of this particular chapter. And then an after you read activity. So once you read all of the ideas and the foundations that we present, then you get a chance to kind of check your understanding, but also apply those ideas to your teaching context. So now let's start with the tips in this presentation, and they're going to come from these chapters. Chapter 2, Soar to New Heights with Assessment, Be Crystal Clear, Focus on Feedback, and Empower Students to Personalize. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jared.
Thank you, Joan, and welcome to everyone here. It's a pleasure to be with you. So this is chapter 2, Soar to New Heights with Assessments, and you'll see that our quote there is assessment is today's means of modifying tomorrow's instruction. So if we go down to the next slide, we can see we have a prompt for you. How do you assess students with technology? So maybe you want to share the technology that you're using to assess students or what students are doing with the technology. But in the chat, if you wouldn't mind sharing that, that'd be great. We'd love to hear. So some assessments are interactive, where they're interacting with something or they're creating something. There's lots of different technologies that people have been using. But we'd love to hear some of the ways that you're assessing with technology. Okay, so Edmodo is a really nice one. Jamboards is a really interactive way. Okay, Padlet, we're actually going to talk about Padlet. Yeah, Google Slides, actually having them create a presentation is a great way. Okay, cool. So Google Forms is a great way to assess students, and now it has a grading feature. You know, they added that a couple of years ago, which is really nice. So there's lots of tools like that. Some more Jamboard, LMSs, forms. Okay, great. So keep adding those in there. Projects is a great way. Wonderful. Portfolios, excellent. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. One thing that we know when we teach online or in a blended environment using technology, we know that we need to teach differently if we're really going to use that technology well. If you've been to any of our previous presentations, you're familiar with the PIC-RAT framework. So there's two parts, the PIC and then the RAT. Let's quickly review what those are. The P stands for passive. So this is how students are using technology. Are they passively using technology? Are they kind of consuming information, absorbing information, but they're not actually contributing anything? That's passive use. Then the I stands for interactive use. They have to actually contribute something. Maybe they're interacting with somebody on like a Padlet, like some of you are doing, or they might be interacting with the technology, playing interactive games. Some of you listed some educational games in there as well. And then the C is creative. So when the examples that were shared for like creating a presentation or creating a portfolio, these are creative ways of assessing students where they're actually creating a product, creating something new that allows you to assess their learning. So that's the PIC, and the RAT stands for, the R is replace. So this is talking about, is the use of technology changing your instruction in a meaningful way? The R is replace, meaning you're simply digitizing what you've always done, replacing what you've always done, but you're not actually changing your practice in a meaningful way. And the students aren't changing what they do in the classroom in a meaningful way either. The A stands for amplify. So this means that you're not totally changing what you're doing, but you're using technology to add some feature or some ability to assess their learning in a meaningful way, but it's not a dramatic shift from what you've been doing. And the T stands for transformation. And this means that you're actually doing something entirely new that you couldn't do before without the technology. Every area on this matrix is good, but if we're only at the passive replacive, the PR aspect, or we don't move to the right and up, then that's an issue, right? But we also don't want to live up at the top right either with creative and transform. That's not realistic either. Now, when we talk about assessment, we can't assess students passively. So we can kind of cross that off. And what we're left with is really the ick rat. So this is when we're talking about assessment, it has to be interactive and creative, but how we use technology can replace, amplify, or transform our practice. So we're going to use this model for the next few examples. One thing that we need to keep in mind as well is assessments, activities, learning objectives. These are really the bedrock, the foundation of all courses. And ideally, they all work together. So when a learning objective changes, our assessment changes and our activities change. Or when we change the assessment, our activities also have to change to match and to align with those assessments. Here's sort of the backwards design model. So basically what the backwards design model means is that when students go through a unit, they do the activity, they take an assessment, and then the instructor or teacher decides if they've met the learning objectives. But when you're designing it, you can't design it in that order. You have to actually start with the learning objectives first, really understand what it is that I need to assess them on, and then you design your assessments, and then you design your activities to actually align with those assessments. So when we look at this, these two frameworks can actually work really well together. So when we focus on the learning objectives and then we consider the assessments, we want to think about, does the assessment need to be interactive, creative, and can I use technology in a way that replaces, amplifies, or transforms? Okay, Joan.
All right, so now why don't we take a look at some interactive activities using technology? And so I'm going to start with the I, and here we have a blank form. Okay, so we're going to take a look at a way to meet learning objectives in an interactive way and to see how it differs when you just use technology to replace a particular activity, amplify and transform. Okay, so as it says on the right, let's use RAT to help us plan our online instruction. Now, for some of you, maybe you don't like rats, but this is using rats in a positive way. All right, let's take a look. So if we focus on the learning objectives first, here, this is an objective for an adult course, English language course, maybe for business English. So by the end of the unit, students will be able to demonstrate their ability to do a professional job interview in English successfully by role-playing a realistic interview scenario with a partner. So if you think about it, in like a regular in-person or face-to-face class, you would pair students up and then they will do a role play. One person's the interviewer and the other person is an interviewee. But let's say you're going to do an online activity. Okay, well, we can do this interactive activity and just digitize it, replace it by using technology. So in this case, we have the same objective, okay, but how are we demonstrating it? And here you can see by role playing with a partner in real time via video conferencing in front of their peers and the teacher. So here it's the exact same activity, just through video conferencing where you pair students up and then they do it in front of the class. All right, well, how might we amplify this activity using technology? So here we're meeting the same objective, but we're doing it by recording a video of a role play with a partner and posting it in an online discussion board to share with the teacher and peers. So first of all, you're saving some time for your synchronous classroom because students are recording it and posting it online. And then most of the time, you don't have enough time for everyone to share, but here everyone engages in the role play. Everyone gets a chance to practice it. Everyone records it, and then they can see each other. And then you might even be able to pick some to highlight in class to have a learning moment with your students. Now, how about transform? In this case, you are checking the objective by meeting individually with the teacher or a guest job recruiter through a video conferencing call to simulate a real job interview. So here, technology is enabling you to have a guest who is an expert or who might work for a business or as a recruiter. Think of the different guest speakers you can have to get students to have the opportunity to practice for real with somebody, and makes it much more authentic. All right, so notice again, the objective is the same for all three in R, A, and T. Okay, but how students demonstrate the objective is different. And so we want you to think about, how can I amplify this activity and how can I transform it in a way that it becomes some more authentic? All right, now let's focus on the C, creative. Let's look at creating a product and how that might look if you're replacing, amplifying, or transforming it. So take a look at this example. The objective is, by the end of the unit, students will be able to talk about extreme sports and safety in sports. So this is for young learners now. And here you can see a very typical kind of project that you might do in a young learner class in person, right? You create a poster, like a brochure about an extreme camp, right? So it's called Camp Extreme, and then you can see the different sports and who it's for. All right, now let's take a look at how we might then replace it using technology in an online environment. Okay, students could create a digital brochure. Okay, and here I just use Google Slides and put images and put in the text. You'll see it's pretty much exactly the same as the other poster. Okay, but then how might I amplify it? Well, first of all, you could simply amplify this one by adding a video. So it's not just images, right? If you use technology from the poster to the digital poster, well, you can add a video that you can see there at the bottom of someone actually doing an extreme sport. Or you can amplify it further by having students create a blog for Camp Extreme. So you might put the digital poster, but then incorporate videos and other ways to demonstrate all the different extreme sports. And it reflects a more authentic type of online product. And then finally, you might actually have students transform the activity. And in this case, two of the students who are in 6th grade, they're from Greece, they decided they were going to focus on an extreme sport and make a video about it. So they still met the objective, but they did it in a different way. And let's take a look at this video.
Highlining by Amalia and Cristiana. Highlining is an extreme sport. People walk across the rope tens of meters above the ground or the water. People can do it all year round. In winter, in spring, in summer, or in autumn. Highlining is a very dangerous sport, and only people with experience and many skills can do it. To do it, you need a mainline of webbing, backup webbing, either climbing or amstel rope. Now, one joke. If you fall, then the only way to survive is God. Thanks for watching.
Isn't that amazing? So here you see that these students transformed the activity. They still met your learning objectives for the unit, but they did it in a new way by creating a video and using multimedia. All right, let's move on to the next one. Jared.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about storytelling. So we look at this objective. In the objective, it says students need to create a story. So we know that we're on that top level creative. We can't do this just with interactive activities or assessments, right? So now let's go through some examples of how to replace, amplify, or transform what we're doing. But before we do, let's start with an example with no technology. So maybe for this unit, previously, the teacher would have had students draw a picture and then write a story about their family on the back that talks about that story. So that's a good way to assess their learning, right? But then let's look at how technology might replace, amplify, or transform that. If you're looking to replace it, there's lots of different tools that you can do, that you can use. For instance, maybe you have them create slideshows, and then maybe you want them to narrate that using Screencast-O-Matic or Loom. Make a video of it, which is really, really easy to do if anyone's used those tools or similar tools. Or maybe you want to simplify it even more and you have them draw the picture just like they always did, but now you're going to record them narrating their story. So that's another good way to do it. Another tool that you can use is Vocaroo. Who's used Vocaroo before? It's a really easy website to use. You can have students create audio recordings, and then it automatically generates a URL that you can then send to the teacher to listen to for feedback. I've used it to give students with feedback as well. So it's a simple tool, but again, we're not necessarily transforming the activity, we're simply digitizing the reading. So here's an example. This is actually my daughter that did the story, and this is her reading it.
My family and I went to the beach. Me and my sister like to bury ourselves in the sand. I like trying to make a moat for the sandcastle. I like trying to find shark teeth with my mom. We found several shark teeth.
Say bye.
Bye.
So in this case, there's certainly things I can give feedback on that I wouldn't have heard if she didn't read it out loud. You know, she can also re-listen to her video. The other nice thing is my daughter at the time could be quite shy. And so the idea of getting in front of an entire class and reading a story could be really scary. And so this gives her an opportunity to read it in video, to practice it, and then maybe it would give her the courage to do it in front of people in an actual setting, right? So while we're digitizing or we're replacing, there's still some advantages to using technology in this way.
I love that example. So I'm going to give you another example with storytelling, and this is actually a story about my own family and using just pictures that I have on my phone. And I'm going to show you how to amplify it in a way using some digital tools. So first, I'm going to start by telling you the first part of the story. And this way, it's very simple. I just used PowerPoint or Google Slides and just took pictures on my phone and then created the story. Okay, so here I'm going to start my story. The story of Sherlock. Once upon a time, there was a puppy named Sherlock. His mommy loved him very much. They worked together, they played together. Then one day, his mommy got married. Now he was part of a family. The children loved him, and he loved the children. But one day, the family adopted another puppy. Her name was Penelope. Sherlock was not very excited about this new puppy. All right, I'm going to stop there because now I'm going to show you how you can amplify this story by using Book Creator. So let's continue the story. And I'll click on here. And now you can see Book Creator. So I'm going to skip to the page. All right, so here's where I ended.
Sherlock was not very excited about this new puppy. Penelope loved Sherlock, but Sherlock did not like the new puppy. She kept following him around. She took up all his space.
Oh, poor Sherlock.
Then one day, Penelope wanted to play. Sherlock got angry.
And what do you think happened next? Before I move on, what do you think happened next in this story? Okay, I'm going to move on. Now, I'm going to amplify it even further. Oh, thank you, Veronica. They fell in love. Oh, they began to fight. Ooh, they got friends. All right. Uh-oh. Did he bite Penelope? Ooh. All right. So now I'm going to amplify further by incorporating video.
They fought and fought until Sherlock realized this was fun. And now they are best friends.
Okay, and that is the story of Sherlock and Penelope. Did you like my story? The audio was recorded by Jared's daughter again. All right, so this is using Book Creator, and obviously it's a really great way to amplify the storytelling. Okay, so now you can also, with your creative storytelling, transform it. This is an example from Zibanizo Muradova in Tajikistan, who worked with teenage students in an after-school program to create digital stories about their lives. And now I'm going to play this digital story that a teenager created about her life.
I was born in 2004. I was the first child. My father left when my mother was pregnant. I have never seen my father and my mom never told me about him. When I went outside, I always saw that every child is hugging and kissing her father. I imagined how a father's love is and wanted to feel it in my heart. I didn't even have a photo of my dad. Always I wondered, what does my father look like? Do I take after him? When I was in the third grade, my mother left for Russia to earn money and buy our own house. Then I felt completely alone. I lived in my grandparents' house and was raised by them. They tried to never let me be sad. They took good care of me, but I felt so lonely. I wanted my parents' love and nuclear family. My grandmother always supported me. She is a role model for me. She encouraged me to study hard and be resilient. She always attended my school meetings, but my friends never saw my parents there. Once one of my friends asked about my father, why he never visited me. Those words hurt me and I cried and couldn't answer my friend. This was traumatic. My mother got married again. Her marriage wasn't successful. She divorced again. However, she gave me a brother. Now I don't feel so alone. I take care of my brother and try to never let him feel lonely. I am always near him. English Access program appeared in my life. It completely changed me. This program helped me to be brave, overcome my challenges, and to feel connected with other students. I improved my English, had a chance to be volunteer and learn computer skills. I celebrated American holidays too. This program turned a shy girl without confidence into a strong and resilient girl. Now I am in the first 5 digital storytelling project and I am in the 7th Haven.
What a wonderful digital story. It was so moving, and you can see how much students can express themselves using technology and bring out who they are and their identities and their stories to become more motivated in the English language classroom.
We want to also emphasize that all of them are good ways of assessing students. So the question is, what's the best way to assess all students? And this is a bit of a trick question, because as we look at these photos, we know every student is different and every students have different needs, different backgrounds. And so in some cases, the best way to assess some students is to use no technology, and others it's to use a lot of technology. But one thing we need to remember is that they're different. We need to assess them differently. As teachers, we can differentiate the assessments, meaning we can look at students, understand their needs, and then we select the assessment for each student. But that can be really challenging, especially when you have lots of students. So another way to do that is to let students choose using personalized learning. So in this chapter, it's empower students to personalize their learning. And you can see there that we have a before you read activity that we do at the start of every chapter. In this one, it's kind of a self-check on how often you allow students to choose certain aspects of their learning. So in this case, it's the time of day that they learn, the place where they learn, the pace at which they learn, and the path that they take to learn. So path is like the activities and actually selecting the assessment that they use to actually demonstrate their learning. So we have a short poll on that aspect, on the path. We're really curious how often you let your students to personalize the path that they take to learn. So is it often, sometimes, rarely, or never? So you should see a quiz pop up. If you could answer that and submit that. If you don't see that, sometimes that doesn't work. You can put it in the chat as well. So how often do you let your students personalize their path of learning? Is it often, sometimes, rarely, or never? Okay, and the results? Interesting, yeah, so about half of you sometimes do that. So I think that's really great. 22% of you often, let them choose their path of learning often. We do have some rarely and not many never. So this is definitely something that we can improve on. It's really challenging to do as a teacher. I'll say that. When I started doing this as a teacher, it was hard to get going with this type of assessment. So let's talk about some easy ways to do that. So again, here's personalized learning. When we talk about personalized learning, it's student choice in their time, place, pace, and path. And for right now, we're going to be talking about the path of learning. One easy way to start, the longer that you teach, you kind of change activities, change assessments, and maybe you don't want to get rid of the old assessment, you want to add a new assessment. So you could start using a this or that approach. So you can basically say, hey, do you want to create a blog, or do you want to create a video, right? So you can give them those choices. Another thing that you can do to build on this is, instead of just this, that, you can also do this, that, or another. And the another part is you let them pick something. You let them pitch or suggest a way that they demonstrate the learning objective. So you share the learning objective with them. Maybe you have some criteria that you need to see these certain things, but then you say, how do you want to do that? And what's really interesting about that is when you let them pick or create a new way, they put in much more effort and time into the projects. And I've seen projects that are just mind-boggling, everything that they've done. Some students will do stop action with Legos. That is tedious work, but for them, it's really enjoyable. They love doing it, and they learned a lot from that.
Okay, so speaking of choice, here's an example that I'd like to share, which actually was a choice activity with teachers that I was working with, or pre-service teachers. And so I wanted to also model that you can give students choice. So in here, I was asking my students, how can you motivate and engage your CLD students in reading? And so I gave them a choice. They could create a cartoon, they could create an infographic using Canva or Pictochart, they could make a short podcast, they could write a poem, they could write a song or rap and record themselves performing it on video, or any other creative way that's not a paper or essay response. The idea was I really wanted to see how they were formulating their ideas and showing their comprehension in different ways. Of course, we were still going to do some academic writing, but when you have to be creative in how you're expressing your thoughts, you start to think about them in a different way. So I asked them to post their final product on Padlet. And so here you can see I created a Padlet and they posted their choice activities. So let me just show you one. I mean, you can see some created infographics, some created some for young learners and for colleagues. And here is an example of a video that one of my students created using Powtoon. I don't know if anyone has used Powtoon, but here's an example. I'm going to turn the volume down a tiny bit. Here we go. All right. I thought that was really cool. And I also love that she also included choice for her students. All right, here's another example, Jared.
Yeah, I love that Powtoon example, because if you had all students do Powtoon, some would hate it and some would love it, right? And the other thing that's nice about giving students choice is you don't get so bored grading either, because you get different variety of things. This is an example of first grade teacher that she created, and you can see how engaging it is. And she created it in a Google Slides presentation. And each of these planets actually links to a different slide where there's the material. So maybe you think, well, my students are too young for choice. That might work for, older students, but you can even start integrating choice in activities and assessments at a very young age. And it's really engaging for students. So now that we talked about path, let's talk a moment about time, place, and pace. The internet is great. As long as you have internet connection, you can learn at any time, any place, and at any pace. You can take longer if you need to. But simply putting an assignment online isn't enough. We really need to think through how we're providing directions and scaffolding. So let's take a moment to talk about that. We have a whole chapter in the book on this topic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so we have a whole chapter. It's called Be Crystal Clear. And so here you can, I've also included the before you read activity where, so in our book, we're giving teachers a chance to kind of reflect on, okay, are they giving clear instructions and how do they know that? And ideas for making sure that you're able to provide crystal clear instructions for your students online. So before we move on, let's share some ideas in the chat box. So how do you make sure your instructions are crystal clear? Do you have any special strategies you use? Please feel free to share them. Okay, I asked them to explain to me what they have to do. Great, comprehension check. Okay, have a student reiterate the instruction. Okay, it's going so fast, I can't see them all. Okay, modeling, asking students to restate, comprehension checks, practice. All right, excellent. So An infographic as well. Okay, keep sharing ideas. I'm going to go on with some of the steps that we give in our book that are hopefully helpful to you as teachers. So first, step 1, clearly describe what students will be creating, and if possible, display a model. So it's always important to be able to make sure students know what you expect of them and what the final product should be. Okay, step 2 is to break complicated tasks down into smaller specific steps. So sometimes you have to scaffold the instructions in order to make sure students know step by step what to do. Step 3, also provide visuals. Now the visuals might be something that you do, but also you could create visuals for each step. So in the example that you see in front of you, you can see that each step by step, right? First, you cut out the circles of different sizes, and then you can see that in the illustration. Okay, and then you draw a picture of your house. Okay, so it gives you the instructions step by step. So the idea is not only give the instructions step by saying it or having it in text, provide visuals. Now, step 4, another really helpful tip is to share an assessment rubric early. So even with younger learners, you can create ones that are simple that they can use. And here you can see they know they need to have 6 circles. All right, okay, they drew 6 pictures of my house, my neighborhood, my town, my country, my continent, my world. They put the circles in the right order and they spelled each word correctly. That gives them the expectation. Now, let's say you're using technology to amplify your activity. Well, here you can see you're going to provide some technology support. Okay, so first you use your phone, you record a video, open WhatsApp, have the little app symbol, go to class number 4, group chat, tap the plus sign, tap photo and video library, and then add a caption, type your name, and tap the send. Okay, so giving all of the step-by-step instructions for also how to share the work. Now, something I didn't put is step 6, which is also to consider how instructions can be misinterpreted and then make modifications. So actually, the version of step 5 with the technology support, that was probably the 3rd version because I realized if I thought of it from my students' point of view, I needed to make sure I added some visuals and added some steps. All right, now, if you do this, and you give crystal clear instructions, then your students will soar to new heights and be able to succeed like this boy.
Hello, my name is Jordi. I live in South America. This is my house. This is my town. This is my country. This is my continent. And this is my world. Thank you.
All right, so that was a lovely boy from Ecuador. All right, now I have another example for older learners where you might do a screencast so that you can explain through visuals, the rubrics, and the assignments. Okay, let me show you a clip of it. On over what a product review is, and we've looked at this model, and we've underlined the parts that make this a good product review, where you are expressing your opinion about the good and bad points about the product. Now I'm going to introduce you to the rubric. Now this looks like rubrics we've used before, and I'm going to use it to assess your product review. So notice the number system with 4 being excellent, 3 good, 2 needs improvement, and 1 redo, which you're familiar with. But notice that I've added an extra line at the bottom for the product review requirements. So you need to make sure that when you're expressing your opinion about the product you choose, you need to have examples of what's good and bad and use appropriate adjectives. All right,
to
so I'm just going to
describe
stop
what's
it
good
right
and
there because you get the idea. You can do a quick screencast to help students know what your expectations are and go through the rubric step by step with them. Another way to help your instructions be crystal clear and to help your students meet with success is to use checklists to provide reminders. So here you can see a very simple end of the module checklist where they can read it from their point of view. I watched 2 videos. I read 2 articles. I took a quiz. I posted 2 or more messages in the discussion board, and I submitted my assignment called Learning Environment Profile. Okay, so that's one kind of simple checklist. Another one could be one that's downloadable. And in this case, this is for adults where you have some tasks that are required and others that are optional. So on your checklist, you make it really clear with color and with labeling it R or and putting it in bold that this is a required assignment and students can keep track with the checklist. Okay, Jared, back to you.
Thank you, Joan. That is so important to have clear directions. If you don't, students are constantly asking you for clarification, and it can be real challenge. Okay, so they've completed the assessments. You're starting to grade them. Now we know it's super important to provide quality feedback. So we know that, but it can be a challenge. So what makes providing feedback so challenging to our students? So in the chat box, if you have some ideas, Jessica already shared like rubrics can be a good way to help. But what makes it challenging? Why we know we should provide good feedback, but we don't always do it. It can be hard sometimes. Number of students, yeah, the workload can be really time consuming. We need to be careful. Yeah, yep. Yeah, we need it to be specific. We need to be aligned to them. Definitely time consuming. A lot of preparation. Yep, misunderstandings, especially when you're providing critical feedback or corrective feedback. Yeah, a range of expressions. Great. So if we go down to the next one, what we do oftentimes is teachers will sometimes have a stamp, an ink stamp, and they put a stamp on a thing like "Great job, good work." Or that's all we write. We say, well done, way to go, that type of thing. Well, you can still do that. That's really important to provide encouragement. I love this example by Esther Park. When the pandemic hit and she moved online, she created these digital stickers of her kind of in the sticker congratulating them, which I loved, right? But we need to go beyond just encouragement to feedback. So when we talk about feedback, we know that it needs to be specific to the student's work, including what they did well and what needs to be improved. But even when we're correcting them, we need to be kind. We need to be considerate of their feelings. And it also has to be timely. So it can be really hard to have all 3 of these, but technology can help. When we provide feedback in a kind way, we recommend that you serve the digital feedback cheeseburger or veggie burger, depending on your style. The bun stands for building relationships. 2 is the cheese or specific praise. 3 is meat or needed corrections. And that's really the heart of feedback, is we want to improve what they're doing. 4 is a lettuce, which is general praise. And then 5 is the bun or support. So let's look at an example. And as we listen to this example, look at the feedback cheeseburger and see if she's hitting each of these things.
Hi, boys and girls. You did such a great job in book clubs. You had wonderful conversations and you worked really hard on your website that you created on Double Dutch. So I'm just going to go over some of it with you. So really like your layout and the topics the way that you chose to break down your website. Really great job. And I also really loved how you included some videos and articles to this interactive image for us to explore more, because I found myself, when you were telling me about the history of Double Dutch, wanting to see some of it. So this was really great. I also love the images that you included and these other videos here to help show us a little bit more about Double Dutch if it was something that we wanted to get started on, and the information that you included about what types of materials that I need. The skit that you included going over the book was absolutely phenomenal. Wonderful job. I'm really looking forward to sharing it with our entire class. So one suggestion that I have is that when you did the book review, I really would have loved to see just a little bit more from you guys if you could work together to expand on this. So, but overall, fantastic job. I'm here to support you. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you guys come see me. Thank you.
So in 1 minute, can you imagine how hard it would be to type all that up, right? But in 1 minute, she gave a lot of feedback and she followed the feedback burger and gave it in a very kind and encouraging way, right? So these types of technologies can be really helpful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And students can watch and rewatch the feedback. And so that's
Yes.
another really great reason to use that video feedback. Another way that you can provide feedback is through peer feedback. Now, you could have peers give feedback using the feedback cheeseburger or another way, which is called a PQP. So students first could give each other praise. First, tell your classmate at least one thing you liked about his or her piece. And then you give a sentence starter. I like ... Then Q stands for question. Then ask your classmate a question about something you didn't understand in his or her piece. So the sentence starter can be, why did you ... And then P, polish. Last, give your classmate one suggestion for polishing or making the piece even better. And so the sentence starter would be, what about ... And so a piece, it could be a piece of writing, a project, presentation, a poem, just about anything. So here is an example, and this one's for young learners. Okay, so here, Ilsa, who's actually my daughter, she said, hi, I'm Ilsa, and I have Snowy Belle, my barn owl, my favorite toy. Let me tell you a little bit about barn owls. They are, they can turn their heads 360 degrees, and they have, they like to eat mice, and they have, I can barely read it because of my eyesight. They have claws and talons. Okay, well, I have to go feed her. Bye. All right, so the first P is I liked your animal. Barn owls are cool. Q, question, why is her name Snowy Belle? And then P, polish. Do barn owls only eat mice? Can you add more about what barn owls eat? Okay, so that's a simple way to give feedback through PQP. Now, let's take a look at how to give video feedback on a video. So here you will see the video that's very familiar because you saw it before about highlighting. And I recorded feedback on the video. All right, let's take a look. Hi, Amalia and Christiana. I'm really excited to see the video you made for the Extreme Sports Camp project. Let's watch it together.
Highlighting by Amalia and Christiana. Highlighting is an extreme sport. People walk across the road tens of meters above the ground or the water.
Great introduction. You're speaking nice and clearly, and I really like your choice of extreme sport. Highlighting. I don't know very much about it, so I can't wait to learn some more. Here we go.
People can do it all year round, in winter, in spring, in summer, or in autumn.
Wow. Well, I'm thinking spring and summer and autumn might be great times to do highlining. I'm not so sure about winter. That seems a little bit too cold for me. Okay, let's keep going.
Highlighting is a very dangerous sport, and only people with experience and many skills can do it. To do it, you need a main line of webbing, that webbing, either climbing or obstacle rope.
Okay, it does look dangerous, and you definitely need to know what you're doing to go highlining. Now, I don't know what the webbing is or what arm steel rope is exactly, so it could be helpful in your video if you have an arrow pointing to each one when you read the list. Okay, let's keep going.
Now, one joke. If you fall, then the only way to survive is God.
Very funny. Good ending.
Thanks for watching.
I loved it. You made a great video, so congratulations. I learned a lot about highlining, and I can't wait to talk to you about it when I see you in class. I'm going to ask you about the webbing and the arm steel rope. All right, great job. Bye-bye. Okay, so you can see that it can be timely feedback, doing a reaction to the video. By the way, it's similar to those reaction videos, which is a new kind of authentic type of communication, but also interacting with students who you're going to see in class, okay, in the next class, and ask them some more. So it's encouraging more communication about the extreme sports. Okay, so I hope that you found that all of these ideas that we shared with you today were useful. We went over backward design as well as ICRAT and how to develop assessments and how to provide feedback that's specific, kind, and timely, as well as some ideas for personalizing students' time, place, pace, and path for their learning online. And if you're interested some more, you can always read a little bit more in our book, Breaking Through the Screen. But hopefully you picked up a lot of great practical tips in this webinar. And Jared, do you have any last words for our webinar participants?
Thank you for coming. We know you have lots to do. We really hope that this resource, this book, can help you as you move forward and start designing the new normal. We all kind of have to learn as we go, but we also want to thank all of the teachers that contributed examples. The book is just full of teacher examples that really